Okay, so we're going to look at the lip sync refinement controls called Visemes, and they're over on the right hand side of your refinement tool. You can see that there are a number of buttons, and these are referring to the mouth shapes that form particular sounds, and these mouth shapes are called Visemes. So the primary buttons here refer to the mouth shapes that are most important for perceiving lip sync, and we have a b, m or p, a f or v, a w or u, and on the top left there is a null button that allows you to zero out a viseme override. The secondary visemes are key other mouth shapes, but of a secondary priority to our primary mouth shapes. So we have an a ch, sh or j, an e, a n or l, an o, a r, s, z, t or d, and th. So we're going to have a look at a couple of examples on this shot here. I'm going to take the grey face off, and I'm going to zoom in so we can see this clearly, and I'll first play through the shot.
At least you won't have to hear him swear every 2 seconds.
Okay, so that shot is playing well, but if we look at it on a more granular level, we're going to first have a look at the opening phrase, at least.
At least you won't.
So it's the at lee, which is a little bit unarticulated. So I'm going to find the l. There we go. So I'm on the l. So I'm going to apply a n or l viseme override here. You can see that the button is now activated, and the keyframe in the timeline is also highlighted. This means that you can use your arrow keys to move it up or down or left or right. You can see that the values go up and down in increments of 10. This should be a sufficient level of accuracy. If I take this back down to 0, then put the grey face on, I'll reselect my viseme override, and then as I increase it, you can see the grey face changing as I add more n or l to that mouth shape. So I'm going to add a value of 50, just so that we can see a little movement when she says at least. Now I'm going to move on slightly later when she says him.
At least you won't have to hear him swear.
Okay, so this is where we hear the m sound. The lips are not quite closing enough for a m, so let me put the grey face back on. Then I'll add a b, m, p viseme, and I'm going to increase that slightly until I feel those lips are making contact. Okay, so I've added 30 there, and I'm now going to render those adjustments. Okay, that render is now finished, and you can see that we now have some good lip contact for the m. And for the l in at least, you can see that we now have some activation of the mouth in that area. So if I press play,
At least you won't have to hear him swear every 2 seconds.
so we now have more definition on those sounds. Now, once you've made these adjustments and rendered them as you go through your timeline, you can see that if I land on a keyframe, the button is highlighted for the viseme that you're on. And if you want to adjust this keyframe, you can either lasso it and use your arrow keys to move it up, down, left or right. Or you can click on the button to activate it, and you can see that it becomes highlighted, and the keyframe in the timeline is also highlighted. If you want to revert to your playhead timeline control with your arrow keys, either deselect the button or simply click on the timeline and deactivate the keyframe. You can also adjust the anchor keyframes around your viseme adjustment if you want a softer or sharper movement into or out of your adjustment. Note also that when you apply a viseme, you can also set a negative value. This will effectively apply the inverse of a viseme. So for instance, if you deemed that the M in this timeline was actually too tightly pressed, you could release the lips from the M by adjusting in a negative direction like so. So, those are the basics of lip sync refinement using Visemes. Thank you for watching.